the apprehensions when the word philosophy is mentioned alongside our religious beliefs or our belief in God. So, just a way of brushing it over, I would easily want to say here that whatever our philosophical persuasions or convictions, philosophy does not make God. That there are philosophical limits. I think by this I imply that philosophy, which is concerned with human reasoning, logic, and abstract thinking, is not the source or origin of God. Is not the source or origin of God. In other words, philosophy does not create or define the concept of God, but rather seeks to understand, explore, or discuss ideas of divinity that may be based in religious tradition, personal experience, or metaphysical speculation. So I think that one settles some of the fears some individuals may have. Then I would also want to add that philosophy is merely a tool for understanding. Another way we might want to look at it is that philosophy does not create God in the sense of bringing him into existence. Rather, philosophy can be a tool to analyze, critique, and deepen our understanding of God, especially in terms of arguments about God's nature, existence, or the role of divine attributes. I'll take that one again. And I say that when we say that philosophy does not make God, and we are looking at it in religious vis-a-vis philosophical understanding, we simply suggest that religious beliefs, experiences, and traditions have their own basis for understanding God, and this basis is distinct from philosophical arguments or reasoning. So while philosophy can offer intellectual reflections about the divine, the belief in God may come from a different source, and that source could be, for instance, faith, revelation, or personal experience. Considering theological perspective, therefore, many believe that God exists independent of human reasoning or philosophical systems. In this view, philosophy may only attempt to interpret or describe the divine, rather than creating or defining God's essence. Ultimately, when we say that philosophy does not create God, we invite contemplation of the relationship between philosophy, religion, and metaphysical inquiry. And it opens discussions on how human thought interacts with the idea of God and whether human logic is sufficient to encompass the divine. So it is absolutely right when we say that God remains who he is, regardless of human philosophical conviction or persuasions. And is a reflection of a deep theological perspective rooted in classical religious traditions. And from this viewpoint, I have said God's nature is considered immutable, unchanging, and constant, independent of human understanding, thoughts, or interpretations. Whether we think or not, God remains and is who he is, cannot change, whether we know him or not. So regardless of the different philosophical frameworks or theologies that humans develop over time, God in many religious traditions is understood as external, as eternal, and is beyond human comprehension and is not affected by our changing perspectives or thoughts. So you may want to consider some of these ideas. God's absolute nature. God is seen as ultimate, transcendent being whose essence does not depend on human beliefs or understanding. His existence and attributes are self-sufficient and eternal. Human philosophies or theological systems may reflect varying interpretation of God's nature, but they don't alter the divine reality. That's a very important point, that the absolute nature of God transcends all our thinking and our philosophies. That God is beyond human comprehension. So many thinkers, that includes the mystical tradition of theology, argue that God cannot be fully grasped by human intellect or reason. God is infinite and transcendent, and our attempts to understand or define him through philosophy or language are always limited and incomplete. As St. Augustine famously said, if you understand it, it is not God. If you understand it, it is not God. Now, what's the role of philosophy then? Philosophy can help individuals approach, question, or explore ideas about God's nature, existence, and interaction with the world. However, philosophy itself cannot create, define, or change God. Philosophical systems can only offer perspectives or frameworks within which humans try to understand the divine. Yet the divine nature remains beyond human constructs. Theological grounding. Many theologians, like Thomas Aquinas in the Christian tradition, argue that while reason and philosophy can lead us to some understanding of God, such as through the 5 ways of proving God's existence, they cannot capture God's full nature. Faith, revelation, and divine grace provide a deeper access to God's truth. So God's sovereignty aligns with the concept of God's sovereignty. He rules over all things, and his essence is not subject to human persuasion. Regardless of how human beings argue, reason, or debate about God's existence or attribute, he remains sovereign, unchanging, and eternal. So God's identity and nature are not contingent on human thought, belief, or philosophy. They transcend our intellectual constructs. Philosophical inquiry may enhance our understanding, but it does not indicate or dictate the reality of God's existence or essence. Therefore, when we say that God's identity and nature are not contingent on human thought, we simply want to capture foundational truth in many religious and philosophical traditions. And this reflects the transcendency and immutability of God. And both of these are central to how God is often understood in religion. The significant meaning on this can be seen at several levels, and I want to look at 7. 1. God's transcendence. God is often viewed as transcendent, meaning he exists beyond and independent of the limitations of time, space, and human experience. In this view, God's identity is not shaped by or confined by human thought or understanding. He is beyond all human constructs, languages, and perceptions. For instance, in many religious texts, God is referred to I am, Exodus 3:14, emphasizing that his eternal and self-existing nature, which is not defined by perceptions or definition humans may hold of him. Number 2 is immutability of God. The doctrine of immutability says that God does not change, unlike human beings whose ideas, emotions, and states can fluctuate. God's essence remains the same across time. This is crucial because it means God's nature is not influenced by human thoughts or philosophies. The perception of belief. People might change, but God's being remains unchanged. This is a core idea in classical theology, particularly in the work of philosophers like Thomas Aquinas, who argued that if God were subject to change, he would not be perfect. So, divine sovereignty as the third point. The sovereignty of God refers to his absolute authority and power over all creation. God's actions and decisions are not swayed by human beliefs or reasoning. His will and essence are not subject to human interpretation or persuasion. In Christian theology, this is often understood through God's omnipotence and omniscience, where his plans and purposes unfold according to his will, independent of human influence. The fourth point is faith and revelation. While human beings may attempt to understand God through philosophy, logic, and reasoning, many traditions maintain that the true knowledge of God is revealed to humanity. In Christianity, we believe that God reveals himself through Scripture. The person of Jesus Christ, the personal spiritual and personal spiritual experience. The divine revelation is seen as independent of human thought. Philosophy may help individuals grasp aspects of this revelation, but it cannot generate or change God's essential nature. The fifth point is God as the ultimate reality. In this essence, God is the ultimate, primary reality, the source of all things, whose nature and identity do not depend on human ideas or beliefs. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle refer to God or the divine as the first cause or the unmoved mover, suggesting that God's existence and essence are foundation to the universe. In this way, human thoughts, systems, or philosophies cannot alter the essence of God. They are reflections or attempts to understand the truth of his existence. The sixth point is religious and philosophical reflection. While human philosophies cannot change God, they play a significant role in shaping how people perceive and approach the divine. Philosophical traditions like theism, and theism, and atheism all try to address the question of God's existence and nature. Yet none of these philosophical systems can change the reality of God's existence. They only reflect human attempts to grapple with the truth. Now, the seventh point is scriptural support. Many religious texts reinforce the idea of God's independence from human thought. The Bible states that, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways." Isaiah 55, verse 8, indicating that human understanding cannot fully grasp God's wills. Ultimately, the core idea is that God's nature is objective and independent, and it does not shift or depend on human philosophies or beliefs. Human thoughts can reflect, seek understanding, and grow in knowledge of God, but God remains the same beyond our limitation. This realization invites humility, faith, and love, as it challenges humans to accept that God's reality surpasses our intellectual grasp, and that true understanding comes through faith, revelation, and spiritual insight, rather than merely through intellectual reasoning. Thank you.